Good evening. Welcome to the March 27th Ferndale City Council meeting. I welcome you to join me in a moment of mindfulness at the start of our meeting, where we relax, focus on our breath, and get ready for our community meeting. So if this is your first time here, this isn't mandatory, so if you don't feel like doing this, you don't have to, but you can sit quietly with your gaze looking downward, or you can shut your eyes. So I invite you to bring attention to your breath. Notice how you're breathing right now. Notice how you're sitting in our chair, and find a way to be more comfortable, more relaxed. And bring attention to your breath. Start taking some deeper and slower breaths. Take a deeper breath on 4 and exhale on 5. Inhale. Exhale. Inhale. Exhale. Maybe turn your head side to side. Maybe you sat at your chair all day at work, in your house, on your computer. Let go of your busy day and come more present into the community space, our city council chambers. And remember to wish yourself well and those who are sitting next to you. And I just want to remind people that we are all here to better our community. And I appreciate everybody being more aware and involved in your local government. We represent you and represent our community as elected officials, and we try to be curious and thoughtful and compassionate. So with that, I invite everybody to rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, can we have a roll call, please?
James.
Present.
Leaks May.
Here.
Mikulski.
Here.
Polika.
Here.
Piana.
Here. Next is the approval of the agenda.
Your Honor, if I could, prior to council making a motion, staff has reviewed an issue regarding the proposed public hearing for liquor licenses. Both those issues have been corrected, so we respectfully request council delete 6A from council's agenda this evening.
Through the chair, I move to approve the agenda with the amendment of striking 6A, public hearing for liquor license renewals for the reasons just stated by our council, otherwise adopting the agenda as presented.
Support.
And supported by Polika. And so moved by Mayor Pro Tem James and supported by Polika.
James.
Yes.
Polika.
Yes.
Leaks May.
Yes.
Mikulski.
Yes.
Piana.
Yes. All right, and we are moving on to the next item, which is presentations, and we have 2 tonight. And the first up is 4A, is the 2022 Planning Commission Annual Report, and presenting that is the Chair of the Planning Commission, Michelle Foster. Thank you for being here tonight.
Hello, good evening. Thank you for having me. Good evening, Mayor Piana and Council. As you said, I'm Michelle Foster, Chair of the Planning Commission. I'm at 535 Florida in the Dales. So thank you for having me tonight, especially for putting me first on the agenda. Appreciate that. I appreciate the opportunity to come before you and to share what the Planning Commission has been up to for the past year. I'll also probably add some details that you might be familiar with, but I also enjoy the opportunity to provide information to the greater public who might not be as familiar with the purpose and the duties of the Planning Commission, though I'll make it brief. So in your meeting packet, do I just leave it like this? Sorry, not familiar with us. So in your meeting packet, you have received the full 2022 Planning Commission Annual Report. I'm going to give you a summary here, and then allow for any questions that you might have. So we provide the annual report just because it's generally good practice to provide the feedback loop, but also for the requirements of the Michigan Planning Enabling Act and the Redevelopment Ready Communities Program as part of their requirements. The Michigan Planning Enabling Act is also the enabling legislation that establishes the Planning Commission's right to operate those. So the city charter establishes the Planning Commission as well. For the city of Ferndale, we have 9 members, including our ex officio member from the city council, and those are elected from the mayor. Currently, we have a full planning commission, which has been wonderful. So we do not have any vacancies currently. These are volunteer positions with no compensation. And one of those duties of the Planning Commission is to make and adopt the master plan. So last year, I think we started this in 2021, but last year we did adopt a new master plan. We went through the process of engaging the public and creating this master plan in coordination with staff and our with a third party that would help us along for that in the process. And as part of that master plan adoption, we created this plan, and we have at the end of it quite a lengthy to-do list of things that we want to accomplish as part of that master plan process. So in your report, you have the full list. Here is an example of some of those items that are part of that master plan. Since we just adopted that plan last year, quite a few of them are either not started or are currently in progress. But we look forward to checking those off as we continue working towards adopting or implementing what we have adopted in that master plan. So along with what's in the purview of the Planning Commission, we also work very closely with the Economic Development Department. And so we have this Economic Development Review in there as well, which is part of that planning process report that you received. So other duties of the Planning Commission include reviewing proposals and advising council on zoning changes, land use changes, and developments. So as we know, landowners have the rights to develop their land within confines of the law, including building code and the zoning ordinance. The zoning ordinance is the city's land use regulations that are enforced by the city with the direction of the Planning Commission and Council. And the zoning ordinance helps implement the master plan. It also protects the character and stability of our community, protects residents and their natural environment, and promotes the compatibility of land uses. So the Planning Commission's duties as part of that are different depending on the type of development that we're reviewing. So as you can see here, the Planning Commission hears the following cases. So we identify them as discussion items. And so when we're talking about discussion items, there's no action taken. So the header of this slide might be a little bit confusing because it says approved development projects and discussion items. When we're talking about discussion items, we don't actually go through an approval process. It's just discussion, no action. We do site plan review. So this Planning Commission will be in charge of the final approval for site plan reviews that do not have additional reviews attached to them, such as a special land use. For a special land use, we would review specific criteria for that special land use and then provide a recommendation for the City Council, who would be the final approving body. Rezonings, which again, we recommend approval to the City Council. Planned unit developments, which we are currently in the review process of one right now. Planned unit development has additional criteria kind of above and beyond a rezoning and whatnot, and similar to the site, special land use or rezoning that we recommend approval to the City Council. We also have the ability on the Planning Commission to waive certain zoning requirements as stated in the zoning ordinance. Those include parking, some landscape requirements such as the number of trees on a development, and building materials. We do not review every development that goes on in the city of Ferndale. Some of those that we don't review would be small-scale businesses like occupying of vacant storefronts, or single-family or two-family residential. The city staff will review and approve those through the building department and community economic development department. Also, fences, sheds, garages, some of those types of developments can get staff approval rather than going through the Planning Commission. So the Planning Commission will use the zoning ordinance as the regulations to review each of these projects that are under our purview, to approve projects that align with the master plan as designated through the zoning ordinance, and that are harmonious with the surrounding uses. Sometimes projects that receive approval are not always constructed, so we just wanted to add this point, as you may have noticed that you will see a development, it comes to the City Council, you approve it, and then you might not see it actually happening. This is something that happens occasionally. Unfortunately, the past year or so, it's happening more often than not, and that's either due to maybe a long process from approval to construction. So once it gets approval from the City Council, we'll still have to gather all of its financing, and they might have to go through, various financiers, state approvals, to make sure that they are lined up and ready for construction. They also might, through that process, find out that they no longer have enough money to construct the development, or there's a various number of other reasons why a developer might not follow through with the development plan or project that is approved. We do have some time limits that are detailed in the zoning ordinance that will allow for a certain amount of time that a developer can use that approval to develop the specific site as approved. So there are a few projects that I wanted to point out that we've reviewed in the past year. So one of those being 1200 West 9 Mile. This is an example of a project that came to us for site plan review that just needed site plan approval. It didn't have any special land uses or rezonings that would have required it to come before the City Council. So this is a 4-story, 56-unit multifamily apartment building on West 9 Mile. The first floor has a small live-work area, so that is what makes it mixed use. And there's a dedicated bike storage room, a covered parking area, and general site improvements. Obviously, a new building and parking lot that adjoins that with the appropriate landscaping. This use was permitted by right in the MXD2 zoning district that it lies in. Did not require rezoning. And then it received the site plan approval on December 7th. So another project that we reviewed, had quite a few discussions about last year was 141 Vester. This is a project that City Council has seen. So this is a 4-story, 72-unit multifamily apartment building. The first floor has 2 retail spaces with a residential amenity space and 52 partially covered, there's a 52 space partially covered parking area. The second through the 4th floors are all residential. And so this came to the City Council because this required a rezoning. It was originally zoned P1, which is a vehicular parking area, and we rezoned that from parking to CBD. The Central Business District, or CBD district, was adjacent to the land, and it made sense that for the development, or the property to be developed on, that it would need to have a designation other than the P1. And it was through a master planning process. I forget when initially, it wasn't just last year, but the previous master plan had been designated this area for like urban development. I forget what this official future land use designation was, but the CBD district conformed to that master land use designation. And then with that underlying rezoning, they also requested a PUD, as a sort of planned unit development. The planned unit development is a tool within the zoning ordinance that allows for some variances from our standard zoning regulations for a public benefit. And so when a developer comes to us and says that they think that they can develop the property in a better way that will have a greater public benefit if they have some grace from the strict regulations of the zoning ordinance, then we can review it as a PUD. And so that designation has very strict review criteria, and then it is like officially rezoned as a PUD overlay. So this was the site plan was approved, and we recommended approval for the rezoning in the PUD to City Council, which we reviewed early last year, and I believe it's now in the process of getting a NEZ, which is a Neighborhood Enterprise Zone tax abatement. So I believe that you'll see this again. Along with that project, we were looking at another, I don't think we have that on here, but you'll probably remember that there was a lot of talk about parking through that project. This is something that the Planning Commission deals with quite frequently, is the demand of parking and how that can constrain different development projects. So as we were looking at the 141 Vester, we also approved, and I believe this was by right, so I'm not sure if you saw the specific project, but a parking deck just down the street on Vester. And so that would be another example of a site plan review that didn't come to you, but we were reviewing and had approved alongside, though they're not tied together, but this project. I would say that they're not tied together because they're 2 different landowners, 2 different projects that were approved along the same time, and certainly in coordination with each other, but has no legal tie to each other. Another project that we reviewed last year is 140 Vester. So this would be right across the street from 141 Vester. And is a new restaurant concept. So it's a conversion of just over 2,000 square feet of the vacant glass shop to a full-service restaurant, excuse me, with an outdoor patio. So this was permitted by right in the CBD zoning district. Because it was a change in use, it is something that we did review at the Planning Commission rather than it being reviewed at the staff level at the city. And so we reviewed, and I believe like the parking requirements, the use requirements, and then some of the outdoor changes that were proposed. 1300 East 9 Mile is a new construction project for a marijuana provisioning center. This is the construction of 2 buildings totaling just over 8,000 square feet on the site of a vacant lot to serve as a marijuana retailer. So the City Council had approved the license at the October 21st meeting. So the use is permitted by right in the M2 General Industrial Zone, and it received site plan approval from the Planning Commission in March last year. This project was really interesting because we worked very closely with the police department on the parking lot and the circulation on site, and we were we had a lot of discussion around the circulation, what the police thought was going to be appropriate based on our current marijuana provisioning centers, and making sure that the city streets could handle that circulation, and making sure that, in addition, that the circulation was not going to impede the bicycle and pedestrian traffic along East 9 Mile. So we had some really great conversations around that, about how the safety along 9 Mile and the exit of the traffic from the site could potentially be impeded by landscaping. There's just a lot of great conversations around the actual proposed positioning of all the landscaping and the sidewalks and the streets, and how they can all interact with each other to make it a much safer corridor for pedestrians, bicyclists, and for those who are accessing the business. 965 Wanda was an industrial expansion that came to us last year. So it's expansion of existing industrial buildings and the construction of 2 new industrial buildings as part of brass aluminum forging, which is quite a big development of 217,000 square feet. I think that's in addition to what was existing. The applicant received several dimensional variances from the Board of Zoning Appeals. So the Board of Zoning Appeals, I haven't mentioned yet, but there are another boards that one of our commissioners from the Planning Commission will sit on that board, and they review the variances from, or most of the variances from the zoning ordinance. I talked a little bit about on the PUD. A PUD can get around some of the zoning regulations as part of an overall cohesive development that's providing a public benefit. There's other ways to get variances from the zoning ordinances. That would be good to go to the Board of Zoning Appeals. And so that's what this applicant did, and after they received those variances at the BZA, they come to the Planning Commission, and we were able to work with them to develop a cohesive site with their expansion of the industrial. And though the use is permitted by right, we did have quite a few questions and concerns about circulation again with large trucks and all the parking and with it. But we were able to come to, I think, a really great development and make sure that the safety of everyone was going to be respected. And so we approved that site plan at the Planning Commission on July 20th. That's an example of some of the site plans that you probably haven't seen a lot of that were approved last year. And in addition to those, the master plan and the development reviews, there were some additional zoning ordinance amendments, and that's detailed in your plan. I would just say, as part of the next year, which is really exciting, we're going to be working on a zoning ordinance update. As part of all of this,
I mean, this year,
this next year, yes, this year,
this year.
sorry, as in, yes, this year.
Starting soon.
Thank you. To be detailed in next year's summary, yes. We really appreciate public feedback in all of the parts of this development. So from the master plan creation and adoption, which informs the zoning ordinance and any updates there, and then that feed through the regulations that help us approve and amend any development projects that come to us. We're always looking for public participation. As I said, the Planning Commission is a board of volunteers that are interested in our community and getting really the best outcome and working with everyone. And we really appreciate having that feedback from our community. So, part of our public participation efforts are detailed here. In alignment with the Redevelopment Ready Communities Best Practices number 1.4, it requires communities to report on our engagement efforts, but we're not only engaging the public for our RC, but we've done this much long time before any requirements, and we go above and beyond the requirements of the enabling legislation at the state and the RC requirements. But as part of those, we did have a lot of efforts around public engagement through our master plan process last year, which included a climate action solutions survey and multiple in-person, I think a lot of it was webinars through our engagement because of the pandemic. But we also had the Downtown Development Authority engaging with the communities with monthly business beat meetings, newsletter, communications round, Woodward, and numerous ribbon cutting ceremonies. We have the city manager's office who engages constantly with the public. And also, as part of that master plan, I should have included that. That was also a Parks and Recreation plan and Climate Action Survey plan. That all got adopted as one. The Parks and Recreation did a great job in aligning with the master plan. We provided some online surveys as part of that process. They've held numerous meetings with the public to discuss the various design aspects of the parks project. I think that parks plan came out really well, and I encourage all of those who haven't seen it yet to review what was adopted last year. And I will just say, as the public engagement, I should have kind of included in each of those steps, because as part of the any rezonings, special land uses, or PUDs, we do have public hearings at the Planning Commission, and we do notice the residents that are within a certain diameter distance from each project. So if you get a letter or engagement letter saying that this development is going up, that's really what that's saying is you can come to the Planning Commission, provide any input that you might have regarding that development. And I encourage you to do so. We also, just a plug for the city, has a really great website too that we like to post project websites when we do have a big development. So. There we go. Now I'm done. Do you have any questions? Thank you for your time.
Thank you for doing the annual presentation. I think we have that requirement for all of our boards and commissions, and so I appreciate you coming here and giving us an overview and remain compliant with the state law as well as the RRC requirements, which we get a lot of grant funding from because we are an RRC community. So I appreciate all of your due diligence as the chair as well as the Planning Commission. I think we're good. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, we're moving on to the second presentation of the evening, which is 4B, introduction of our new customer service advocate, Cassandra Line.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. I am happy to finally introduce our new customer service advocate. Her name is Cassie Lang,
Cassie. Okay.
and she's been with us, it feels like just a minute, about 5 weeks. But in that time, she has already taken over an incredible amount of work. So as you remember, this is a position we've been talking about for a while, something that would allow us to take stock of all of our customer service across all departments, centralize it a little bit, look at all of our messaging, all of our time frames, our service deliveries, things across C-Click Fix, website, social media, phone, and in person. And so, Cassie, you come from the state of Michigan? That was your last job? Is that, yes.
Contractor with state.
Yes. And she's an absolute pro, so she's just in the last few weeks taken on C-Click Fix and has basically become the owner of it, closed out a lot of older problem issues, met with our departments, figured out a better and faster and more efficient way to go about it, and is kind of seeing that out right now. And then also, just kind of generally speaking, has taken over all of the responses to our internal emails, social media requests, and things like that. She's also spent a couple of days working on site with Parks and Recreation and with DPW to kind of feel the tenor of what they're all dealing with and how many calls they get, the kinds of questions. So I will allow you to say hello.
Hi, it's nice to meet everyone. Really have been focusing lately on C-Click Fix. DPW has been awesome in helping me with that, Dan and Andrea. And then I worked over with Emmanuel and Lorena at Parks and Rec, and that was awesome as well. They took me on a park tour, so learned about the history of the parks, and Kara and Riley have been awesome as well. So great to be here.
Welcome to the team. We're so glad you're here. And I can't tell you how great it is to hear that C-Click Fix is going to be managed more timely and consistently. And I know that was a struggle because we didn't have a dedicated staff person, and so
Right.
I'm really excited. I get a lot of feedback from residents about the C-Click Fix.
Yes.
So
Well,
I know I'm not
hopefully-
the only one.
Yeah, hopefully you get some good feedback
Yes.
going
Well,
forward.
I'm really glad you're here, and council is a resource if you ever need us.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, next up is call to audience. And I want to preface that immediately after call to audience, we'll do the consent agenda, which will literally take 3 minutes. And our only item on the regular agenda tonight is flock. So while you may provide comment during call to audience, I encourage you to hold your comments to the actual agenda item. If you're here to speak on flock, I will be opening it up for public comment. But if you're here for a call to audience and are announcing something else going on in the community, I encourage you to go first. But of course, if you need to leave and you can't stay for the flock, feel free to leave your comment too. So I just want to remind everybody about our discourse with dignity as part of our regular call to audience. We set around 30 minutes, and we'll do so more at the end of the meeting if we need to. And you please speak for 3 minutes, and we have this mindfulness clock. And remember that we really support respectful and courteous behavior so that everybody can share their beliefs and viewpoints in a supported environment. And some people might be here for the first time giving their public comment, and that can be a little scary if you're not used to public speaking, and so we want them to feel heard and feel welcomed and supported. And then, of course, abusive language, threats, bullying, and personal attacks are discouraged, and getting to the root of an issue is hard if the content is buried within disruptive or harmful behavior. So please address your issues and not people, and please address the city council and myself, the mayor, rather than staff, because they report and take direction from city council. So with that, I welcome anybody to come up and start and kick off public comment tonight. If you have something to say. Hi, Dave. Welcome.
Okay. Well, I was at the last council meeting, and it was like we came to talk on a particular item, 3 of us, and it's like regarding the intent of 3 citizens to speak on a regular agenda item at the last meeting regarding the now approved sidewalk on the west side of Pinecrest on the south of the high school. I think the city council would have saved a lot of time and money by actually talking to the landowner of that land along the sidewalk, which you hadn't been, and we were trying to have you point out that you hadn't talked to the landowner, and now there's be a lot of changes and disruption in the process. And many times I've come to council, and a lot of times it's really hard to hear you, because it's kind of like you're speaking among yourselves, or you're forgetting to speak into the microphone, and then I come here and speak from the audience. I can't hear you speak in the microphone. So please speak in the microphone. People can hear you. So that's what I would just want to say. Thank you.
Thanks, Dave. Is there anybody else who would like to speak tonight on? Hi, Prasad.
Hi. My name is Prasad Venugopal. I'm an Asian immigrant living in the city of Ferndale. In 2001, after they passed the Patriot Act, I went to the Detroit airport to take a flight to a conference. That was just about the time when they were forming the TSA. And as I was in line in security, this question was asked, pointing to me, is this a possible? Subsequent to that, I was pulled aside and questioned and checked. I think that was a question of mass surveillance. A person with a strange name, an immigrant traveling alone, a male, somewhat similar, maybe in somebody's mind, to the profiles of those who used planes to destroy the World Trade Center. In 2003, I was engaged in opposing the war in Iraq, which, as we know today, was an absolute disaster. And Noel Sala, a good friend and a lawyer at the ACLU, told me, you could do nothing wrong, and you are doing nothing wrong. All your activities are protected by the First Amendment. Yet, the Patriot Act has such a mass surveillance sweep that you could be accused of conspiracy to obstruct the business of the US government. So I know mass surveillance. I have experienced it, and I have heard about it from those young men who went to mosques to pray at that time, and I worked with the ACLU to inform them of their rights. It's not enough to put a line in a policy that says that it's a violation of this act or this policy to provide any information to ICE. Because ICE can issue subpoenas to pull the information about any immigrants that are in the database of that flock safety contract that Council is planning to vote on today. It targets people like me. It targets those young men and women and their families whose only crime is to drive up Pinecrest to go to school here, to have their activities tracked. I think our Fourth Amendment rights to unreasonable searches and tracking is very important. We don't need to do this tonight. We need to have more conversation. We need to bring in civil rights advocates, privacy advocates, and have a full conversation about how to do it right. This is not the right way to do it. So I call upon Council to vote down this flock safety contract, to engage in the discussion that would balance our needs for security against our rights for civil liberties and privacy and Fourth Amendment protections. Thank you.
Thank you, Prasad. Is there anybody else who would like to give public comment tonight? If not, I'm going to move on and we'll get to the flock as soon as possible. All right, I am going to end public comment, seeing there's no one else who would like to give comment at this time, and I'm going to move on to the consent agenda, and I'm going to read it in entirety, and council can choose their direction. All right, 7A, approval of the March 13th, 2023 meeting minutes. 7B, approval to upgrade the fuel management system software in the amount of $3,000, the expense charged to the motor pool contractual service and the account number listed. 7C, approval to award the 2023 spring tree planting supply to Schitzel's Nursery, Inc. and Trees of the Field, LLC, in the amount of $13,107, an expense to be charged between General Fund Public Services Repair Maintenance account number 101-441-775 and General Fund Parks Capital Outlay account number 101-750-977. 7D, approval of submission for grant funding in the amount of $50,000 distributed via the T-Mobile Hometowns Grants Program. 7E, approval of the resolutions of support and financial commitment for a series of grants offered by the Michigan Department of Natural Resources for up to $454,500 with match requirements not to exceed $364,000 total, and authorization for the city clerk to sign the resolutions. 7F, approval of a 3-year software as a service agreement with Amelia Technologies, Inc. in the amount of $7,150, and authorization of the city manager to sign the agreement. And 7G, approval of bills and payrolls as submitted by the finance director and subject to review by the council finance committee. What is the pleasure of council?
Mayor, I move that we approve the consent agenda item as presented.
Support.
Moved by Leaks May and supported by Mikulski.
Leaks May.
Yes.
Mikulski.
Yes.
James.
Yes.
Polika. Piana.
Yes, and that is approved unanimously. All right, so now we are on to the regular agenda item. There's only one item. It is 8A, approval to purchase flock license plate recognition platform for the Detective Bureau. And tonight I'm going to treat this a little bit like a public hearing. We'll have staff give their presentation. I'll open it up for public comment, and then I will close public comment and then open it up for staff, or I'm sorry, City Council questions of fact-finding, but eventually we will need to go into a motion and debate with the motion on the floor. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Captain Spellman to kick us off with the presentation.
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, Council. Tonight I'm just going to provide a brief recap of the flock safety system before the vote. Just to give you an update, last time we spoke in front of Council was in December. We introduced the flock safety program. And then we moved on with some of the goals we wanted to accomplish in the following months. So in January, we held a virtual public hearing, town hall meeting, where we had over 45 attendees who discussed the system, policies, procedures, some of the technology itself. We got some valuable feedback from that meeting. We moved on to an in-person public meeting the following month. We had about a dozen attendees there. So what we heard from these meetings from the community was two areas of confidence and areas of question. So our community was confident in the motivation of the police department, our intentions of our policy, also the requirements for our peer sharing, and our intentions to put community safety as a priority and include the community in our policies and procedures. Areas of questions came down to the cost. Would it come or impact the general fund? Our record retentions requirements, protecting civil rights, protecting privacy, and where the proposed cameras locations would be. So we listened, we made some changes. The input was valuable, it was impactful. So some of the changes we made is we confirmed that the drug forfeiture fund would be the source of funding for the next 2 years in the pilot program. We narrowed the agreement to 2 years, which is once again a pilot program. We submit a biannual program evaluation to determine impacts and effectiveness. We provided a map with the potential camera locations. We also will submit a biannual outside jurisdiction activity access report. And later on tonight, we can provide an example of an investigation workflow so you can see exactly how flock would be used in a real case. But I think it's important to acknowledge why we've taken such a slow and diligent journey in exploring LPR technology. And that's because we aim to meet the nation's best practices. And when it comes to police technology, those standards are outlined in President Obama's task force report for 21st century policing. Police technology is one of the pillars. It is recommended to improve efficiency and transparency. And when adopting new technology, it must include intensive use of policies that are developed with input from the community and constitutional scholars. And the policies should protect human rights and address privacy concerns. I think taking our time and heavily involving the community has met those standards. So just a brief recap for anybody who didn't see any of the presentations leading up to this about the technology itself. We really want this technology for our detectives. So even though we are 43 members strong in the police department, we have only 4 detectives that are assigned full-time to investigate cases. They are the ones who be accessing this technology in reaction to a crime to try and solve it and bring resolution to victims. As you can see by their caseload, time is of the essence with them. And they investigate all kinds of cases, from larcenies to malicious destruction of property, all the way to kidnappings and everything in between. So right now, the way our current approach is officers and detectives will interview witnesses, and we'll still collect camera footage from private businesses or homeowners, but that's time-consuming, and it's challenging. And some of those challenges are that witness recall is imperfect. The systems that surveillance systems we tap into might be broken or not recording. They might require corporate security to access, and it takes a long periods of time for our staff to review multiple videos. So as you can imagine, this process is long and tedious.
Through the chair. I'm sorry, you used a phrase that I don't think you truly intended. You said tap into.
Yeah, we ask private businesses and homeowners for their video, and they provide it as part of the investigation voluntarily.
Thank you.
Thank you for clarifying that. So I'm going to provide an example of how we would use the flock system. The example comes from a recent armed robbery we had at the White Castle. So officers arrive on scene, they collect suspect and/or vehicle description, either from witnesses or from business video or homeowner videos. They also interview witnesses to get descriptions. They will try and access private video, and they also will try and collect trace evidence. Once they collect that information, they submit that information through a police report to the detective bureaus who will handle the investigation. Investigators narrow down a list of suspects to be interviewed and investigate based on leads produced by the evidence in the police report. So flock would only be used if that information produced a vehicle description within 30 days of the crime. So what this would do is it would narrow down the list of matching vehicles suspected in committing this crime. So in this particular case, a male came into the White Castle and implied that he had a gun and robbed the cashier. Now the male, we could not determine an age or a race because he was wearing a mask, a COVID mask. He had a hat and glasses on. So putting his picture out to the public and asking for their assistance would have been pretty futile. But luckily, a witness provided a vehicle description. We were able to provide that vehicle description to the City of Detroit Police Department, who does have the flock safety system. And luckily, when that suspect left the scene, they traveled into Detroit. So talk about the contract briefly. I'll start from the bottom and work my way up there on the left. It is a 2-year pilot program. It is to be paid for by the Drug Forfeiture Fund. Year 1 costs approximately $25,000. That includes installation. Year 2 is approximately $22,000. So I'll try and be as clear as possible in this next portion, but one of the benefits of the flock system is in the first 60 days, they will allow you to use more cameras than you're going to purchase to actually determine where the best locations will be in your city. So our proposal is to purchase 8 cameras, but we're going to place 16 cameras out in the city and determine the best, most effective 8 cameras based on a data analysis or data-driven analysis. Just to break down the individual cost of a camera, one camera is $2,500 a year. That's a subscription cost. We do not own the cameras. And then there's a one-time installation fee of $350. There's also an annual subscription fee to the software that costs $2,500. And I think it's important to note that the data is owned by the city of Ferndale, not FLAC. And that data is deleted every 30 days. Here's our proposed camera locations. As you can see, we're focusing on the entry points to Ferndale based on the suggestions of FLAC and some of their strategies. We're trying to get the entry points that have the most volume, but after the 60-day trial period, we'll be able to determine which locations are best. Just reiterating why areas of high vehicle traffic are most effective. We're going to test the 16 camera locations for 60 days. We're going to choose the 8 most effective locations, and then we're going to remove the other 8. No cost. Here's an example of, we get this question a lot in our meetings, what does the digital image that FLAC provides look like? There's an example up there on the screen. What kind of data do you enter and what kind of data do you receive? So this is very important. This is a tool only for detectives investigating crimes. There's limited user logins. There'll be 4 detectives assigned to it. They will have to enter their login information. They'll have to enter a criminal report number. This will be audited, leave an audit trail, similar to the other technologies we use, body-worn cameras and the Lean Law Enforcement Information Network System. And the information that the detectives will be entering is one of the following: the make of the car, color, a license plate number or a partial license plate number, or vehicle damage. In return, they will get a digital image of the rear of the vehicle, as you see there. This is a digital image. It is not a video. It is not facial recognition. It will also provide the make of that vehicle, the color, and the date and time that the image was taken. It will also have the location of the camera it was taken from. One of the things we really like about FLAC in particular is that it has its own transparency dashboard. Many of you know that the police department has a transparency dashboard on the city website that tracks our use of force, our pursuits. It has all of our policies on there. It has our traffic stop and citation information, and it also has our training hours. So we believe this will be a valuable tool for the public and city council to access at any time and get some data that we can customize. We can put our policies on there, we can put usage metrics, and other listed features. With that, I'll open it up to any questions of me or the chief.
Well, I'm going to delay that until after public comment. I'm kind of teaching, putting this forward as a public hearing, kind of. What's that? Did you have a comment?
Through the chair, just one comment that we didn't include.
What's that?
They test the 16 cameras and then they come back with 8. Per the public surveillance ordinance, we would have to come back to council and publicly adopt those 8 locations, so that's a public record. So the public and council would know where those final 8 cameras would be located.
Okay.
Just a point of...
Thank you for the clarification. Okay, so I'm going to open it up for public comment on this item. Again, the discourse with dignity rule, guidelines apply. Please keep your comments to 3 minutes. And just remember that this is a really sensitive topic for a lot of people. There's pros and cons in the audience tonight with very strong feelings. So please be open-minded and hearing what others have to say. And with that, who would like to be first? Just please, been sitting there patiently since 10 minutes before the meeting.
Hi, my name is Stacy Verkane, and I'm a resident of Pleasant Ridge. And I'm here today to voice my support of the FLAC system that the city is considering implementing. And while I have great respect for Prasad's comments previous to mine, I have a different perspective. On November 17th of 2021, my 16-year-old daughter, who's a student at Ferndale High School, was kidnapped at gunpoint by a stranger from the Sunoco gas station at 8 Mile and Pinecrest while she was filling up her car at lunchtime. Thanks to the quick actions of her friends, who immediately alerted me when she didn't return to school that afternoon, the assistance of the Ferndale Police Department, and my daughter's unrelenting bravery, we got her back 5 hours later. Since then, I've spent a significant amount of time thinking of how lucky we are that we got her back, and it's not lost on me that there are many families and victims of these types of crimes who aren't as lucky as we were. There are families out there who needed that one additional piece of information that could have led to the safe return of their child, and that piece of information could come from the FLOC system. We were lucky in our situation to have information as to the type of vehicle and the license plate number of the person who took my daughter, but what would we have done if we didn't have that information? How different would my life be as I stand here today? And while the FLOC system won't solve the issue of criminality, I'm confident that it can go a long way in providing peace of mind to the citizens and visitors of Ferndale, and that the city is doing everything in its power to keep everyone safe. Thank you for your time.
Please, go ahead.
Hi, I'm Mary Blakely. Do you want my address? I live in Woodward. I'm a resident of Ferndale, and I appreciate the opportunity to be here to share my views of the proposed pilot, and I think it's important that it's a pilot for the FLOC safety project. I had heard of this project some time ago in another place, and I frankly was a little bit cautious about it, not knowing a whole lot about it. I am kind of a private person, a huge proponent of individual rights and low governmental interference, and so I did have concerns about it. And one of my thinking on it has been shaped somewhat by my experience living in Germany. When my first day in Germany, I was instructed to go to the police department and register as a resident of that community. And I wondered at the time, and I still wonder, why law enforcement needed to know where I was living, and that's kind of shaped my view of things. So I went to I participated in the Zoom meeting with cautious openness to hear what was said. And I was actually, there's risks in everything in life, but I was actually pleased with what I learned. I had been really concerned about what happens with the readable information captured by the cameras. And I was reassured that it's only available for police working on active cases and high crime cases such as the kidnapping, vehicle theft, robbery, that kind of thing. It's not what I was glad it's not, which is traffic violations, or we'd all be pulled over in the camera. So every search, and I've learned and read more about it, every search conducted by a detective will be used, will be a traceable audit conducted. There will be a record of it, and so that's also very reassuring to me. The other thing that I heard is that it really will make efficient use of detectives' time because it will increase the solvability of crimes. They have data that they don't just kind of have to go randomly looking, not randomly, I apologize, I don't know law enforcement words, but looking for data that it will be, so it'll be cheaper. I mean, it'll be less expensive and a much better utilization of detectives' resources. So I see the clock is ticking away. And I live in Ferndale, I walk in Ferndale, I drive in Ferndale, I leave my car in an open parking lot. I like the safety of Ferndale, I love Ferndale, and I think this will make it a safer place to live for everybody. And I know I would strongly suggest that we have some monitoring of issues like this gentleman has raised, because I don't want to minimize his concerns at all.
Thank you, Mary, for your comment. Thank you. Who would like to come up next? Hi, Trevor.
Thanks for having this conversation. I'm Trevor Johnson, 27-year resident of Ferndale. I remember coming downtown to Ferndale when my mom told me I couldn't come here because it was too dangerous. And it wasn't too dangerous then, and it isn't still too dangerous now. But I understand the desire to have a system that increases the solvability of cases. That makes a lot of sense. And with these individual stories, I think there's a tendency towards bias towards one end or the other about is this a good or a bad system. And in my public health education, it's exactly what data and analysis is for. So in looking at the data from the dashboard, our existing demographic spread of how people engage with police and the outcome of this system, we have a really rich data source to compare pre and post, and also if we were to take into some account racial bias in policing, we could do a pre and post with and without some assessment of a racial bias in policing to whatever degree it may or may not exist, because it doesn't take a lot of analysis to see that those who engage with Ferndale law enforcement, that demographic spread is not overlay on our demographic spread, and that would be what we consider totally equitable enforcement, that everyone is equally able to and potentially able to do crime, so we don't see a disparate spread. But that's not the truth we see in our society. So taking that into account is important. So I think we have a really rich data set to do this assessment with. And when it comes to potential harm from this, it's not about the lack of rules that are out there, it's about lax enforcement. So it's really important to do that rigorous assessment pre and post with whatever controls you have in place. So with the potential pool of cases that are more solvable for police, this might be a positive feedback loop on the need for them to engage with the system, the need for the system, and the need for more detectives. So that is a concern for me when it comes to more cases being solvable and then being able to do more things, but still with the same limited resources. Thank you.
Thank you, Trevor. Anybody else would like to come up? Good to see you.
Council, it's been a long time.
Former Police Chief Tim Collins.
Nice to see everybody, except for her.
Put that down to 1 minute.
As most of you know, I'm a lifelong resident of the city of Ferndale, 40-plus year career in law enforcement. I saw the technology of the police department when we would write what we called field investigation cards on 3x5 pieces of paper and filed those into file cabinets, which I'm sure have all been put into a dumpster by now. I saw technology from VCR, in-car video, that we had an entire room dedicated for storage, to the high-tech technology that we have today in our in-car videos, our body cams, and our tasers that integrated video. So I believe that this technology is game-changing for law enforcement and what it can do. The controls that have been put onto it are exactly what are necessary. But I recall when I was a captain in the police department, we had a very similar situation with the high school when we wanted to put video cameras into the high school. And we had a lot of spirited pushback in regards to privacy and what was the underlying focus for that. But we eventually convinced everybody that it was a good idea. We did do a pilot program, and I would surmise that you could not get a school administrator or a teacher that at the high school right now that would want to operate without that type of video technology and the preventiveness and the investigative resources that it supplies to the school for safety. Lastly, I didn't know that these folks were going to be here tonight. My heart goes out to what happened to them, but on my 3x5 cards that I was going to use for notes, that was one of the examples I was going to give. If it was not for the friends and family of that young lady, the information that would have been supplied to the police department would not have been there, and that result, the end result of that situation, could have been drastically different. This system very well could have intervened in giving the detectives that information that they could have used to solve that crime as quickly as it was. Hats off to the police department for what they did in that investigation, certainly on the family and friends of that young lady that in my opinion, saved her life. But this type of technology is exactly what could be used in a situation like that going forward. So I'm a huge advocate of this 2-year pilot program. Thank you.
Thank you, Tim. Hi, Tari.
Hi, I am Atari. I am not a resident, but I am a business owner in Ferndale. I've been in Ferndale for...
You can speak to us.
I've been in Ferndale for over 8 years. I am definitely for the program as a business owner, and for the residents, but as a business owner. I was not in Ferndale, but I've had a business in a city before where I got robbed, everything taken out of my building. The police were notified 3 times, they never came out. When I called them, they told me I was not a priority and that they didn't have the manpower to...
Can you clarify what city that is?
It was Detroit.
Okay.
It was the city of Detroit.
It
was not Ferndale. No, it was not Ferndale.
I just wanted to make sure.
But they told me that they did not have the manpower to knock on doors and ask questions, basically. So at that time, my business was not my sole income. You know, it is now. I feel like if that happened now, it would change my life drastically. So I am definitely for the system, just to cut back on crime with businesses and different things. I do feel if people know that it's out there, it will deter them from doing things as far as break-ins. My landlord had a break-in at his other location recently, and I think if the system was out there and if people knew that the system was there, it would make them think twice before they felt like they could take what we've worked for and worked hard for granted and just come into our place of business. So I'm definitely for the system.
Thank you, Tari. Go ahead. You are also polite tonight. I thank you for giving everybody the opportunity to speak.
Hello, Mayor. Hello, Council. My name is Randy Harp. I live on Saratoga. I am very much opposed to the idea of spending a lot of time, money, and consideration for additional surveillance in the city of Ferndale. Looking at the map of the locations where the cameras would be, it's a clear indication that we'll be watching to see who's coming and going into the city and out of the city. And I think that while that technology may be useful in the short term and for very specific issues like were explained, which I understand, we have been able to manage without, we're not a city that is wallowing in crime. And I think we have an opportunity here to stay away from the kinds of tools, building the kinds of tools that could eventually be misused at some point. And that's a very big concern. The same people that are in this room today, the reasonable folks who are here, may not be the same people who are sitting in this room a few years from now, once the system's in place. And there are many opportunities to use technology to change things. President Obama was famous for making war possibly more humane by using drones to bomb people without creating a serious risking our soldiers' lives or whatever. And that doesn't make war better. And same thing here. Using the surveillance that is available in this doesn't necessarily make us safer. And it has the opportunity to be misused. And that's a very big concern for me. And it's a considerable amount of money, whether it's from drug forfeiture. If it turns out that it's a very valuable tool to the police, does that mean that we go out and we seek more drug forfeiture to pay for those kinds of things? So that's an issue for me as well. And then on a practical note, one of the biggest in the community in the Zoom conversation that was had, I attended that. One of the biggest benefits was the productivity of our detectives. And there's no consideration for reducing that. The budget of the police, I understand we're taking it from drug forfeiture, but that money could be used in many other ways to build a stronger community rather than building tools to watch people coming in and out of our community. And I don't think that is something that is in line generally with the sensibilities of the people of Ferndale. Certainly not me. Thank you.
Thank you, Randy. Rabbi Feynman. Good to see you. Thanks for being here.
Your Honor, I first must say I'm very impressed that you know everybody's name. Every citizen.
Well, they all introduce themselves, but I do know them.
Okay, my name is Herschel Finn. I'm Jewish Ferndale. I was participant in the Zoom meeting for this system, having no idea what it was. I heard both sides. I've been hearing both sides here. It says in the Talmud that we should pray for the welfare of the government, because without it, people would swallow each other alive. Meaning to say that it's the purpose of government to protect the citizens of that society. That would mean all citizens. Those people who might be considered oppressed, those people who feel persecuted, it's their job to be protected as well. This system, I've had lots of talks with the people involved with it, is not something which is an oppressive system. I don't see it that it would be used in any way to oppress people. I see it rather as specifically, since there is this checks and balances that are going to be in place, and it is a 2-year project, and we could have this conversation again in 2 years to determine if there was abuses made and if anybody's civil rights were violated by it. But in the meantime, so I see it as a valuable tool for the help of the police department, even though Ferndale is not known as a high crime city, but this will make it that much easier, and that those people that are not involved and engaged in doing this will now be able to do other things. And as was brought up before, Ferndale is probably on the cutting edge when it comes to community and engagement. The police force is top-notch. They're understanding. We have a community liaison officer that is involved with the community. We see programs that are going on geared toward the schools, geared to the communities, and I believe that this will only be an aid to the system, and as a leader of a house of worship, having this other tool, this next tool, will make my congregants feel that much safer to come to my house of worship. And I strongly urge that the city adopt this system. Thank you.
Thank you, Rabbi. Hi there, good evening.
Hi, my name is Des Squire. I'm with the Michigan Roundtable for Diversity and Inclusion. While I am not a resident of the city of Ferndale, I'm actually here in support of some of our community partners in different projects that I help manage, including Advocates and Leaders for Police and Community Trust, the Metro Detroit chapter, and a budding coalition around transparency and accountability for the criminal legal system. I'm here today because there is concerns about the speed that the City Council is moving for this program and for the system. One of the things that the two different groups that I've mentioned look at is how community relations with police are impacted by barriers to that. And unfortunately, because we are a regional-based coalitions, and that we get the opportunity to actually see examples of successful and not so successful projects in that. And one of the things that we know is that mass surveillance is a point of issue. deters that trust when trying to work with community. We know that over surveillance often ends up disparately impacting our Black and brown communities, or LGBT and transgender communities. It also creates a hyper focus in that Ferndale prides itself on being a destination spot. People come here for events to be able to enjoy themselves and gather. But by knowing that you're being tracked, how you come in and leave the city and that you are essentially being followed, that can deter that and that could interrupt. And that Ferndale, as you've heard mentioned by several of your community members, that is not a high crime area. So the question is why does there surveillance need to be put in place? We see that the Green Light Project, who does use cameras to follow in some of their businesses and that to help try and deter, has actually been found to not be effective. This is similar programming in that while we do know cities like Royal Oak have used this to help with like parking, and that they're still running into issues just trying to implement this. What is that impact going to be on trying to build trust and continue to promote this as a community that is inclusive and welcoming of the folks that are not just in Ferndale, but surrounding it? We encourage you as the roundtable to hold off and to listen to your community and have more conversation with them around this technology before making a decision tonight. You have a great evening.
Thank you. Who else would like to speak? Please come on up. Feel free to come on. I don't have to call you. You just come on up. Hi there, welcome.
Hello, my name is Brent Higuchi. I am a business owner. My business will be opening in a few months in downtown Ferndale. I'm a very introverted person, so pardon me. I wasn't even planning on speaking, but being of Asian descent, I do feel, my opinion matters, so I felt I should speak up. My business was broken into before even being open. I did have cameras on the property. The people who broke in have still not been found. So I am in support of the flock system. I do feel like this system would have been very helpful as a tool to find the people who did break in. And it really is simply a tool. So I do have faith in the city that they will use the tool as they intend to and in a proper manner. So I do want to say that I do have faith in the city and that this is simply a tool. I am concerned about my safety. I'm concerned about the safety of my employees who will be there. I'm concerned about my customers who are also Ferndale residents. There will be times when we will be open at dark, after dark, and this has already happened to me, so I am very concerned that it may happen again in the future. So I am very much for the system.
Thank you so much for being here. I'm sorry you were broken into. All right. Anybody else would like to give comment? Omar? Okay. Sorry to call you out. Just wanted to make sure. Okay, come on down.
I'm here as a property owner in the city of Ferndale. I am a member of the DDA also, but that's not the hat I'm wearing tonight. The hat I'm wearing is that I own 2 buildings in the city of Ferndale. And I'm sorry to say, but when I keep hearing that Ferndale is not a high crime area, it's not a high crime, it's an unreported high crime area, meaning a lot of people do not report the vandalism that occurs, such as to my tenants who both just spoke. It's unacceptable, and we need to do something about the crime, whether it's flock or security cameras or a combination of all. Better lighting has been suggested. I'm in support of all of it.
Thank you, Omar. All right, I think we've got everybody in the audience who'd like to make comments, unless I think everybody else remaining is staff. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to council, and please ask Captain Spellman to come back up if you have questions about the agreement or the policy that has been proposed, or anything else, how it functions. And the city manager, and I'm sure the police chief will jump in where they need to. So who would like to kick off their questions? Additional questions for the captain?
Through the chair, I've got just a few. And one, Captain Spellman, I don't know if you're the right person to answer this one, but was the draft policy shared with the public prior to publication of today's agenda? Do you know?
Yes, we discussed it at the town hall meetings.
The Zoom one too?
Not positive on the Zoom one, but I know for sure at the in-person.
The in-person one, okay.
Through the chair, we discussed it at the Zoom meeting and posted it on the city's website as part of a story, but then we shared it at the in-person, which was the ask.
Thank you, I appreciate that. Are you able to tell us on an annual basis how many unsolved crimes does Ferndale Police accrue on your books that would be covered within the list of permitted uses within the draft policy?
So that's not something we currently track, but it would take a lot of time and effort to figure that out, especially with the year's worth of cases. I could tell you off the top of my head, a recent case that's gone unsolved was a drive-by shooting where the shooters were in a vehicle. They shot up an Airbnb on East 10 Mile. Well, that's the most recent case I can think of. And the example I gave earlier, the White Castle armed robbery, that wouldn't have been solved without the city of Detroit's FLOC system.
And I read, I think Canton started having some community discussions around the same time that we started having discussions. And I believe I read in an article that they're using grant funds if and when they invest in FLOC. And I also saw earlier today there were some DOJ grant awards for FLOC cameras in Trotwood, Ohio, and Glendale, California. And in my searching, I also came across a website called policegrantshelp.com that had a web form for FLOC safety. So I'm wondering, have we looked at grant sources? And if we have, what have been the results of those?
Yeah, the chief has more information on that. He's kind of looked into the Canton situation.
I know we plan on exploring some of those options to see if they apply to our community, because some of them may be specific to high crime areas. I guess that's a subjective term. What is high crime and not high crime? Also, there were some grants that involved some rural communities.
Saw that one
so
too. I didn't put it on my list for that reason.
It's something that we're always kind of keeping our eye out for grant opportunities. I know it's not. I'm not quite sure what Canton used. I know that they used a different provider, Motorola, and I think they may be buying, instead of a subscription service, they may be investing in capital. So there may be a little difference in the application, but we will certainly keep our eyes out for grant opportunities going forward.
I'm also curious whether, do we know whether other Woodward corridor communities have adopted FLOC or similar systems? And if so, do you know which ones and when?
The most notable is the city of Detroit. They've had it for a few years now.
Do you know if it's FLOC or another company?
It is FLOC. So they have FLOC in addition to the green light system.
May I interject?
Please do.
I called the city administrator of Southfield today and the mayor of Southfield. They've had FLOC in for a year. This is a community that's 70% African American with an African American police chief, and they've had no issues. And they're about to expand it. They say they have no issues. You may disagree with that. But they are expanding the use of FLOC in 3 of their areas in their downtown, I think Lawrence Tech area, which they call Centropolis area, and then one other area. So I tried to do some of my due diligence on that too.
And although they're not on the Woodward corridor, some of our neighbors have the system as well. Hazel Park, Masson Heights, I believe Troy just adopted it, Michigan State Police and Oakland County Sheriff's Department.
And I don't know if this might be a question for our legal counsel. I suspect I know the answer, but even though the draft policy prohibits using the system for immigration enforcement, traffic enforcement, civil infractions, and so forth, if the city received a subpoena, a court order, or even a search warrant for our flock information that was within those prohibited categories, would we not still have to supply the information?
The chair, normally yes, unless there was a effort or motion to quash the subpoena. A basis in order to do that.
And then lastly, I read some information earlier today that caused me to look at the policy again, and there was some reference to MDC, and MDC isn't defined. Can you clarify what MDC is?
Yeah, MDC, in layman terms, is the computer in a patrol vehicle.
Okay.
So it's what law enforcement officers use when they're in a patrol car.
Okay. So my question is, what is it, like mobile?
Mobile dashboard computer.
Mobile dashboard computer, thank you. So my question is, when an officer is doing a search on the mobile dashboard computer, is the FBI's NCIC database one of the tools that they can access?
No, and for clarification, detectives would be the only users. The 4 detectives would be the only users.
Understood.
So the patrol officers would not be searching flock in the MDC.
Okay.
And the flock system is not attached to any third-party database like the Secretary of State.
Let me
or
explain the
Carfax
reason
or
that I asked, because we might be talking at cross purposes a little bit. If I remember correctly, the policy talks about kind of cross-checking the hot list, so that a hot list hit itself won't be acted upon. It'll be cross-checked with MDC and or dispatch. And so what I'm trying to figure out is what's the database that would be cross-checked with, and would it include the FBI's NCIC database?
Well, that's a different part of flock where it's an alert system where we can enter into flock an NCIA database of stolen vehicles and Amber Alert vehicles that is vetted by the NCIC.
Okay.
And that would, if the flock system sees that license plate coming to the entry point of our city, it can alert dispatch that there's a stolen vehicle or an Amber Alert vehicle that's entered the city.
And so what I'm trying to get at is the cross-checking. What database would the cross-checking pull from?
NCIC.
Okay. Okay.
So, Councilmember James, the process would be the hit by flock, the officer would be notified, but they're not to take action based on the flock hit, if that's what you're talking about. There's checks, and even if our officers were to come across a stolen vehicle, they may stop that car on a stolen vehicle, but action is not taken without confirmation with the originating agency.
Okay.
And that is done by computer, basically a secure email where it's confirmed. Because there are cases, specifically, I hate to pick on them, stolen vehicles out of the city of Detroit are notorious for being turned over to the owner but not taken out of the system. So that's why there is additional follow-up and checks beyond just the hit. And that's a matter of operating procedure currently with all systems. They would say, this is an NCIC hit on a wanted felony vehicle. You are authorized to stop based on this. But we always go a step further and get confirmation from the agency in real time We do not make arrests based on just information on a computer, if that makes sense. I hope I answered your question.
Yeah, you did. Now I have to go back to my list of questions.
Do you mind if I open it up to the other council members and we'll come back to you?
Yeah, actually, I think that was my last one. Thank you.
All right, I'll open it up to other council members with your questions. Anybody else? Yep. Yeah. Are you ready?
Yeah.
Okay.
All of this is going to be aimed at the contract primarily rather than operations. So should I direct my questions to you or to our city attorney? Maybe both?
I guess the simple answer is, I guess it depends.
Okay.
But the city attorney has gone over that contract prior to this meeting, yes.
Okay.
Ask away.
All right. So, within our contract, Section 2, Item 11, upgrades to the platform. There's a statement in there that says, Flock may, in its sole discretion, make any upgrades to the system or platform as it deems necessary to useful to maintain or enhance the quality or delivery of Flock's products or services to its agencies, the competitive strength of or market for Flock's products or services, such that the platform or system's cost efficiency or performance or to comply with applicable law. So my interpretation of this, and please correct me if I'm wrong because I am not a lawyer.
What number is that again?
It's in Section 2, Item 11. Okay. Look for the item that says upgrades to platform.
Thank you.
My interpretation is that this means that at any time, Flock may change what they're doing, and they can change the sort of service level or some of the functionality to increase their competitive strength or their marketability. Does that seem to jive with your legal interpretation of that kind of a statement?
Well, through the chair, I would read that focus principally with respect to upgrades system or platform, which it maintains ownership of its system and platform. References the goal of enhancement of the quality and delivery of its system on its platforms. And so rather than each instance where there is an upgrade, seeking permission from the agency or every agency, make those types of improvements.
Okay. So, section,
Can I
yeah,
ask
go ahead.
It says it won't materially change any terms or conditions with this agreement. Does that?
Kind of.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Scrolling into the section about confidentiality, so Section 4, Item 1. I'm going to read this as well. For clarity, Flock may access, use, preserve, and/or disclose the footage to law enforcement authorities, government officials, and/or third parties if legally required to do so, or if Flock has a good faith belief that such access, use, preservation, or disclosure is reasonably necessary to comply with legal process or request, enforce this agreement, including investigation of any potential violation thereof, detect, prevent, or otherwise address security, fraud, or technical issues, or protect the rights, property, or safety of Flock, its users, a third party, or the public as required or permitted by law, including respond to emergency situations. Flock may store deleted footage in order to comply with certain legal obligations, but such retained footage will not be retrievable without a valid court order. Does this supersede our ALPR policy that we have? All of this legal language, does this mean that Flock can hand over data to entities outside of Ferndale even if they are not compliant with our ALPR policy?
The chair, reference in that to legal process or court order, to the extent that there was, that would supersede face the proposed policy.
Okay. Next item, still within confidentiality. So section 4, item 2, agency data. As between flock and agency, all right, title, and interest in the agency data belong to and/or retained solely by agency. Agency, meaning our police agency, hereby grants to Flock a limited, non-exclusive, royalty-free, worldwide license to use the agency data and perform all acts with respect to the agency data as may be necessary for Flock to provide the Flock services to the agency, including without limitation the support services set forth in section 2.10 above, and a non-exclusive, perpetual, irrevocable, worldwide, royalty-free, fully paid license to use, reproduce, modify, display, and distribute the agency data as a part of aggregated data. So, and I'm not going to read the rest of that part because it's really long. Am I reading that right when I say that we are granting Flock the use of our data and that they are not governed and beholden to our policy for that aggregated data?
For the aggregated data, I would agree with.
Okay.
But I think it's important to understand what aggregated data is.
That's my next part. Coming up to it. I'm just going in order. Okay. Next section, still under confidentiality. 4.5, aggregated data. Flock shall have the right to collect, analyze, and anonymize agency data and agency-generated data to create aggregated data to use and perform the services and related systems and technologies, including the training of machine learning algorithms. And I'll stop there as well. Now, I sent that into the city manager's office. We do have Flock's response that that section refers to the small amount of anonymized data that goes into improving their machine learning algorithm. They anonymize a small number, less than 1% of all images, to continuously improve how their software distinguishes between Toyota and Honda, so makes of a vehicle, or between red and brown, etc. Do we know what etc. is in that context? Do we know the full breadth of it?
I'm not sure what you're referring to. I didn't see.
Oh, Joe, do you know?
They're describing vehicle description, so machine learning as it can relate to the vehicle making distinctions, or the machine learning making distinctions between vehicles.
Okay. Do you know if it includes in that vehicle fingerprint items like bumper stickers?
Yes, it does.
Yes? Okay.
We're talking about bumper stickers, accident damage, identifiable features. I think that's where they're going with the red, brown, like color descriptors. I think that's what they're referring to.
Okay. Do we have any information from Flock on that item and that algorithm and the machine learning therein that they will hold true to just that limited amount for the next 6 months? So just the next 6 months, they're going to stay true to that and not change anything about their machine learning, not change their algorithm in any way, shape, or form. It's just going to be to identify vehicles and distinctions between those vehicles.
That's an operational decision from Flock. I mean, I'm not sure where does the 6 months come from?
Random.
Oh,
Because I was going to ask 6 months, a year, 5 years, 10 years. Do we know anything about their future plans for the algorithm and the machine learning therein?
that's a private company, no.
Okay. And I think my last question, nope, 2 more, sorry. The section on indemnification, and this is just another clarification question.
Can you say what page or what?
Nope, I can't, because I have it in a Word doc.
Oh.
Let me see if I can find indemnification.
Section 9.
Section 9?
13?
Paragraph 9, or Article
Page 13.
Thank you.
And I apologize, I believe you've already clarified this, but I still had it in my notes, so I'm still going to ask it. In the event Flock is legally compelled to comply with a judicial order, subpoena, or government mandate to disclose agency data or agency-generated data, Flock will provide agency with notice. So does that mean they will still supply the data? They'll just give us a notice that they did so?
Not sure where exactly in that paragraph.
I should have just highlighted it on the PDF. Let me try to find it.
Through the chair, I'd like to, while we look for that, take the opportunity also just to make a distinction. If there is a record request, the record is only survivable for 30 days, then it's automatically overwritten. So they're, just be aware if they were to notice us due to a legal complaint, that complaint would have to make it to us within the record retention schedule, which is 30 days.
Through the chair, point of clarification on that. Flock is able to restore deleted records and provide those if necessary. Is that correct? Yes.
I can ask for verification. I don't know the answer to that. I can ask for verification.
Okay. And I said I had one more question, right? Let me scroll back up. This is earlier in the contract, so let's go back up to section 2, item 1, provisions of access. And I will read that as well. Flock may use the services of one or more third parties to deliver any part of the services, such as using a third party to host the web interface, for cloud storage, or a cell phone provider, or wireless cellular coverage, which makes the services available to agency and authorized end users. Warranties provided by third-party service providers are the agency's sole and exclusive remedy, and Flock's sole and exclusive liability with regard to such third-party services, including without limitation hosting the web interface. So I believe I sent this, yes, I did send this over to you. I think the rest of council has seen it. The meaning that I interpreted was valid, and the meaning I'm going to read. The clause is saying that the company Flock may use the services of other companies, third parties, to provide parts of their service. If a third-party service provider provides any warranties or guarantees about their services, those warranties are the responsibility of the agency, so the customer using Flock's services, and not Flock. Flock is not responsible for any of the issues of third-party services, or if there are any problems, the warranties provided by the third-party service provider are the only solution available to the agency. Now, Flock did clarify that the third party in this case is Amazon Web Services, as well as, what was the second one, Joe? Do you remember?
I think whatever wireless technology provider, so Verizon,
Okay.
whatever network provider.
Do we have copies of those warranties that Flock said that they would provide?
They said they would ask their legal representation to provide the warranties.
Okay,
So I
we
have
do
not received them as of
We
yet.
don't have them currently.
Not as of yet.
Okay. That's all my questions.
Thank you. All right, moving down the line, Councilwoman Pollico or Councilwoman Leaks May? Do you have any further questions?
I will go, if I may, through the chair.
Yes, please.
So, for the last couple months, and actually through today, I've received lots of correspondence from residents. I've spoken to residents, have heard concerns regarding this tool. I am glad that the mayor was able to reach out because that was going to be one of my next steps, to reach out to communities that are utilizing this tool, particularly communities that have the majority African-American populations.
You have a question?
I have comments.
Well, comments are for a motion, because that means we're sort of debating what's on the floor.
Okay, well, all of mine are comments, so.
Okay.
Through the chair, so yesterday, I did contact Councilwoman Mikulski individually, and I also contacted Councilwoman James individually, and probably spent about 3 hours on the phone between the two of them, and we talked about a lot of things, and we came up with a number of questions. And so most of my questions have been asked because some of these questions we developed together. So I don't want anyone to think that I just don't have any questions or concerns. It's because all of my questions have been answered. So I just wanted to make that statement.
Okay.
Even though it's not time for statements.
I'm just trying to be.
It's about questions.
I'm trying to be really. I'm just trying to be really clear. I know it's a hot topic. And we have been talking, all of council behind the scenes, and receiving a lot of community correspondence today via, I think, text messages, emails, and Facebook, and people just pros and for and against, honestly. I think I've gotten an equal amount. And I just wanted to say that council did start this process back in October with staff prior of getting an introduction, and had one-on-ones about what it is. And so at this point in time, if there's no more questions, we do need a motion to proceed. And I can't make that motion. By position of mayors don't make motions. So if there is no motion made, the item dies.
For the purpose of conversation, I approve the 2-year pilot agreement with Flock License Plate Recognition Platform for the Detective Bureau to be paid from the Drug Forfeiture Funds 265-000-818-000 as submitted by the police captain.
I support in terms of, for means of discussion.
All right, so we have a motion on the floor. I will leave it back to you,
Okay.
Councilwoman Leaks May, as you indicated you had comments.
All right. Where did I leave off here? All right. So, again, I've spoken with a lot of residents and community members, people in the police department or former law enforcement. I've spoken with our chief. And I have received lots of correspondence, particularly today, but throughout, since we've been talking about the Flock system. What I heard was that there were concerns regarding who could have access to this information. And what I heard was there is a trust in our police department, but just not in trust in other departments that may have this information. What I heard was a family speak about the kidnapping of their child, which is very close to me because my child is one of the best friends of that child. And I happen to be, excuse me, at the school when my daughter called me in tears. And I went into the room where my child and her friends were being questioned by the police department, and there wasn't a dry eye in the room. These girls were fearful of the safety of their friend, and I just wanted to put my arms around her and tell her everything was going to be okay. For what seemed like such a long time, there was no word about the safety of this child who has been in my house numerous times, and I consider her one of mine. When we finally got word, hours later, that she had been found, I just broke down because I just wanted her to be safe. And I'm not going to go into the details of her being away from her family and what she experienced throughout that time, but I know that this tool could have probably helped move the process along even faster. And I also think about all of the missing persons that are still missing. And this isn't just these are children, people, family members, friends of all races that sometimes they get lost in the system because there is a lead that has gone to nowhere, and that well, sometimes people are recovered and sometimes they aren't. Now, I have a personal experience with someone I love and care about being missing. And I know that there may be people here that don't have that experience and cannot relate to what I had to see that day and what I had to experience. But I do know that a surveillance tool like this could maybe help with something like that. And I hope that no one would ever have to experience anything like that. I have watched our police department go through all kinds of accreditations, to go through all kinds of steps in order to be more transparent, in order to change their perception and be more available to the community and be open to the community and have an open door policy. I've watched that happen. And I've also spoken with our chief, who personally told me that this is a tool that can help them be better and be more effective in their roles. So I just want everyone to know that I've heard the concerns. I hope you're hearing mine, and that although I've received many forms of support for this, and as well as just as equally many forms of opposition, I heard my police department say and take steps for accountability for this tool and the chance to be able to utilize this tool. We have a police advisory board that the department has been open enough to say, yes, let's have this board. And they are also asking for a tool to help them be better at their jobs. I pride myself on being open and honest and transparent, as well as thoughtful in my decisions. And my decision, after long consideration, is to allow this police department to have this pilot, to see how it works. And I want to be here to see how it works. So with that being said, with a lot of thought, a lot of deliberation, tonight I plan to support the police in their effort for this pilot, understanding that it is a pilot, and that this council or any other council is expected to oversee and see how that pilot is going. I expect the police department to be transparent as to how it's going. And that's all I have to say about it, Mayor and Council. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilwoman Leaks May. Else who would like to make a comment? I'll go next.
I mean, I'll cut to the chase, and I have some remarks that I am gonna hopefully not read too much, but discuss. But I do plan on voting no tonight. And candidly, this hasn't been an easy issue to decide. The very first time that I heard about Flock and the city's interest in using their services, it was a hard pass for me. But out of the respect that I have for Chief Emmy and Captain Spellman and the many conversations that we've had and the trust that I feel that we have built, I told myself I'm going to go into this with an open mind. I'm going to hear them out. And candidly, many of my initial assumptions and concerns were resolved through learning more about some qualities of Flock, but more importantly, the limited uses that have been narrowed down in the policy. So some of the pros that I kind of want to highlight is I feel like our police department does have realistic goals with this system. You know, there are a lot of communities that sell it as, you know, a crime deterrent and crime reduction, and we're going to bring crime down to 0%. And our police department is much more realistic than that. They're looking at solving certain limited crimes and locating endangered people. And I do appreciate that more realistic approach. The technology, at least for now, is not using facial recognition technology, which we've banned in the city for public purposes. The data is owned by the city, not Flock. The system tracks who use the data so that there can be auditing. And I do think that the draft policy is a very good policy, narrowing the use of the cameras. It's not perfect, but it's an excellent starting point. And the chief's response earlier tonight about cross-checking warrants and alerts on the hot list, candidly, was exactly what I had hoped to hear, that because these databases are so rife with errors, that confirming them with the originating agency is the best practice. So for things like Amber Alerts especially, this seems like a great tool. And for anyone who's experienced or been impacted by violent crime, I completely understand the appeal. But that doesn't quite resolve all of my concerns. I get to skip the one about NCIC inaccuracy. One serious concern that we really don't have a solution for is uses by other law enforcement agencies that aren't permitted by our policy and don't align with our values. There's really no way that we can resist subpoenas, court orders, et cetera, for agencies who are criminalizing poverty and seeking disadvantaged people. You know, one example would be, you know, we border states that where people can't get abortions, and we have a Planned Parenthood clinic in our community. And I'm really concerned about things like that being, you know, using this technology, which I think is well intended, for purposes that we don't intend to use them for. The other thing I want to point out is that Flock only started in 2017. Crime statistics have been deeply impacted by COVID in 2020 and 2021. So they don't really have a robust data set to really track their effectiveness, their accuracy, or their abuse. And I'm uncomfortable with being a relatively early adopter, even though it has really exploded and proliferated in recent years. And while I haven't had a chance to read all of the court opinions that have challenged the use of automatic license plate readers, it's my understanding that more legal challenges are coming because of the proliferation of systems and the variety of ways in which those systems can be used. And the indemnification clause in the contract gives me very serious pause that if a lawsuit were to arise for use of the system in a way that wasn't even triggered by the actions of a Ferndale police representative, if it's really something inherent in the flock system itself, we're still on the hook, as I read that indemnification clause. So I think it's wise to pause and to not be among the defendants in the upcoming challenges, and to wait and see that flock systems itself will survive in the event that they may be hit with a large judgment. And even though public use of flock cameras is more limited, especially with the limitations of our draft policy, flock safety also contracts with a lot of private entities, HOAs, corporate entities, where the level of surveillance is far more intrusive, alarmingly so. In gated communities, for example, cameras can track the coming and goings of residents to an alarming degree, and really monitor when they come and go, how often they come and go, what time of day they tend to come and go. And I'm not comfortable supporting that level of intrusion by doing business with a company that's okay with that. If you look for flock employee reviews, they're not good, especially on the question of diversity and inclusion. Now, I understand that new companies, especially new companies that have an explosion of growth, have huge learning curves, and I hope that they take the impact in these terrible reviews to heart and improve the way that they're treating their employees and diversify their employees, especially their leadership. But again, to me, that's kind of a wait and see issue. I think there are better uses of city resources that I'd like us to put our money and energy into. For example, we did have a contract with Common Ground providing some social work services and a crisis team, which is coming to an end because it was only a finite kind of a pilot program itself. Now, while I understand that Common Ground has a resource issue themselves with being able to staff that mobile unit, and there's a bit of a lack of social work support generally, I'd like to see us putting our energies and our resources into those arenas. And while I commend Chief Emmy and Captain Spellman and the city manager's office for hosting the community discussions to hear out questions and hear concerns, and I also want to compliment the community that I attended the first session, and I really thought that the engagement and the comments on all sides of the issue were really thoughtful and productive, and respectful of the complexity of this issue. It's not simple and straightforward. But in addition to that engagement, I wish there had been more engagement around the policy itself. One, because I think on one hand, the policy might alleviate some concerns and narrow the areas of disagreement, but then we also would have had the benefit of additional, ideas and critiques and perspectives as to how to make the policy even better. So if we do end up adopting tonight, I'd like to see further engagement around that. Because the ACLU and the Brennan Center for Justice both have recommendations as to policies and limitations on the use of ALPRs, and our policy includes many of those recommendations, but not all of them, and I think it's worth engaging around those. So while I hear valid arguments both in favor and against, at the end of the day, I've really had to ask myself, what am I going to regret more? Which vote would I regret more? And voting no has two negative consequences that I can think of. One is that theoretically our officers have one less tool, or not having an additional tool, to respond to Amber Alerts or to locate truly violent offenders. And I don't take that lightly. But I'm not sure that Flock has really made its case, other than some anecdotes, that the investment is worth the downsides. Second consequence that I am concerned about is the appearance of not supporting Chief Emmy and Ferndale Police in general. A few meetings ago, we passed the first Civilian Police Advisory and Review Board in Oakland County, which some may construe as picking on the police or over-scrutinizing them. And I understand that a no vote here could feel like depriving them of tools that they feel they need to do their jobs better. And I don't take that consequence lightly either. I hope that they will understand that my hesitation has more to do with the proliferation of surveillance technologies and this company than your good faith work. Whereas voting yes today would result in a number of negative consequences that I'm not comfortable with. And I don't want to reiterate all of them, but I do want to highlight that many programs like this do have a high rate of disparate impact on people of color. Again, it provides financial and moral support for a company and a technology that I'm not comfortable with. And I feel that the technology and the company aren't consistent with our guiding principles of integrity and inclusiveness.
I'll swing over here on the left. Councilman Polika, do you have?
So some of the comments that were made tonight, I do share. Some of them I don't. I don't think it's a surprise to anybody that I've supported this technology for quite some time. I appreciate everyone who's come tonight, spoken on both sides of the issue, whether you were for or against it. And I think there were a number of presented hypotheticals of, you know, what could happen, what might happen, and I'm just concerned that nothing has been really proven as fact as this has happened. The company has been around for only 5 years, but at the same time, there's not a lot that's been said about the complete misuse of this particular technology. I understand that there's concern, but again, we've also expressed that this is a pilot program. If at any time, if 6 months from now there's an event that happens and we realize that our data has been compromised, we could end it right there. But in 6 months, if we were able to solve a crime that we wouldn't have been able to solve without the system, I think that's worth the investment. And I believe that that's worth the risk of the hypotheticals. And so that's why I'll be voting yes today.
Okay.
Councilwoman Mikulski.
All right. I have a lot of notes again. So let's start with two truths. Technology should never be assessed exclusively at a single moment in time as it currently stands. Technology is designed to evolve and change. And then, second truth, privacy once lost is almost impossible to regain, period. Our residents and council support our police, and I think we all can agree that we want to enable them to protect and serve. When I first heard about this project, much like yourself, I was 100% against it. Then I attended a session with you all, And I shifted to be 100% for it, to the point that I was advocating for it within my own family, to my husband, to my friends, to my residents. My stance shifted again after compelling information and questions from our residents, data from the ACLU and the Brennan Institute. It shifted even further after reviewing the contract and feeling like there were conflicts between the value propositions Flock presented and the contract language. We're being asked to hand over public information to a private, for-profit organization with problematic investment ties to organizations with broad data analytics capabilities and ties to mass surveillance efforts. Flock's pitch to us has been solidly revolving around their commitment to privacy and ownership of our data. While we own the data, the contract states that we are granting Flock the use of that data in perpetuity. While we have a fantastic ALPR policy that limits sharing data, Flock has the ability to supersede it and share that information. While the data is scrubbed after 30 days, the aggregate data can be used in perpetuity by Flock. While this product in its current iteration appears solid and like a fantastic investment, Flock has spelled out that this product can change based on Flock's desire to increase their competitive strength, marketability, or to improve their service line. None of us know the future, even the agents of Flock. While we have faith in our city and our police, I have personal reservations about outside parties using the data, especially given that we're a city that has been such a bastion of safety and privacy and inclusion. This is an ecosystem we're buying into. It's not just a tool for Ferndale. That ecosystem is recording date, time, and details of vehicles up to and including bumper stickers, which can easily create a detailed profile of individuals' movement. Now, Flock stated in their response to us that the contract can be changed up to the moment that it is signed. I think it's more prudent to button up the privacy and data sharing aspects of this, if possible. The fact that even today, after 3 presentations and 2 community sessions, I've received feedback from residents who are concerned about this being facial recognition, traffic ticketing, parking cameras, etc., tells me that we would benefit from stronger engagement, especially around the ALPR policy itself. What I don't want is for this to impact the trust our residents have in our public servants. And I would love to have our soon-to-be formed police advisory board give this a stamp of approval. I don't expect this to go away. I can see the benefit of the tool in property recovery, increasing public safety, everything. All of the arguments that you have made are valid for us to have this. I think we just need to button it up a little bit more. That's all.
Thank you. First, I want to start off with, I'm really grateful and impressed, well, you all haven't seen it, of my fellow council persons navigating this tough issue. We've been talking for months with each other, and my journey it seems almost a mirror journey as Councilwoman Mikulski's, and even resulting in some very heated conversations in my vehicle with my husband as well. And so, you know, these issues, this is a very tough issue, a very tough vote for this council, and I just wanted to say I really appreciate all of your thoughtfulness, feedback, input into the policy. I see the, as a macro view, I see how this policy has evolved because of your input and feedback, and from residents who came to the engagement meetings and sent questions to the city manager or police chief over the past few months. And I know city staff took that to heart and wrote stronger policy guardrails into what I think. I mean, I see your DNA all over it, even though, you know, you are not supporting it. I can totally see your civil liberty or civil rights lawyerist DNA in there. And so I just really appreciate everybody's involvement. And I've had a lot of sleepless nights lately around this issue. So at this point in time, I really am supportive of this now, and it has been a journey to come to this spot. And I do believe our police have the right protections reflecting our community's interests. I feel that we have great accountability in place, and we reviewed that accountability line significantly and reinforced it through the Community Police Advisory Review Board of who is responsible for enforcing policy, for misconduct of an officer when a policy is not followed, and what recourse is taken, decided by the police chief, and then reinforced the manager. I have heard, wait for the Community Police Review and Advisory Board. This may meet quarterly or more. It will be seated in July, and their first meeting will be what you call storming, forming, and norming, and learning what the boundaries are of the CPARB, for short, Community Police Review Advisory, CPARB, CPARB. So once they are seated and up and running, which I estimate will be closer to the end of the year, that they will be part of the accountability in place of the 2-year pilot. This is something that they will take on to review, monitor, and assess over time. And that will be with potentially a new seated council early next year. Y'all don't know, I'm not running for mayor again. Announcement. But I also am taking a victim support. We have heard about the oppressed and those who might be hurt by such a tool. I feel like the policies are in place. Other council people have brought up very good points on data, but I think we just approved in our budget license plate readers for parking. So in one instance, we were saying license plate readers to give parking tickets is okay, but we are going to have a challenge with license plate readers to help our detective department, which is primarily the department in the police department that will be using Flock and accessing the information via the hot list, that it is inappropriate there. So it's okay to be your license plate red if you're parked, and I know that's shot at with a handheld camera by the parking department, and just slightly different use on our major thoroughfares. But we are moving into that technology too, and so I think it's valid to say our United States has an issue with data protections and privacy, even on social media, as we saw this week with some odd congressional hearings on TikTok. But victim support, we haven't talked a lot about tonight, except your very personal and deeply moving story. But we're trying to solve crimes and make people have people retrieve their property and whose lives were violated by being a victim of crime. And if I'm supportive of helping our police department, particularly our detective department, close these cases and solve these cases. quicker and with better outcomes. So with that in mind, I view the new Police Review and Advisory Board as the entity that's going to oversee the pilot and give feedback on it. And they could potentially say, end this within a year, or not, depending on what's happening. But I would also say that we should be reviewing what's happening in Southfield, Madison Heights, and Hazel Park, in terms of their data. Flock should be giving us that information, and we should be coordinating with their administrators, their city administrators, about what their policies are and where ours may be a better guiding light than theirs, to bring them to the level where they should be at Ferndale's. So with that, those are my overall comments. As we've all made comments and we have a motion on the floor. Now,
Can I just make a point of clarification? It's not about the substance of the motion. There have been a couple of comments made about phone calls made among us. I want the public to understand where the Open Meetings Act ends and begins. Three of us cannot talk about this issue together. That would be a violation of the Open Meetings Act. What we can do is call each other one-on-one, one at a time, and talk through questions, concerns, issues, and that's what was made reference to.
Thank you for that clarification. Yes. That's how we discuss council. We call each other and get feedback and, on opinions.
You have to, otherwise we'll be here till 3 o'clock in the morning.
Yes, that's how we function. That's how good council functions. So with that, I am going to move us into vote.
Polika.
Yes.
Leaks May.
Yes.
James.
No.
Mikulski.
No.
Piana.
Yes. And so this passes 3-2, but with some very clear concerns expressed by our council members who voted no, that will need to be kept that will need to be kept at the forethought as we go through this pilot. You know, Flock is not off the hook.
Can I have point of information? Did we just approve the contract as written with no modifications at all?
I believe so. That was the motion on the floor. So, this passes 3-2, and we will be moving forward. Staff will be moving forward with this Flock, and we will be keeping the forefront of these concerns forefront moving forward. And so that concludes our regular agenda item, and I'm going to move us into call to council.
Thank you, Mayor. Emmanuel, if you could go up and take your traditional #1 spot again. Emmanuel Johnson from Parks and Recreation will be giving an update.
Yeah, so glad to be following such a serious discussion. Before I get started, I do want to just speak as a city employee, appreciative of the immense thought and everything that went into you guys making this decision. Just it's one of the things that makes me proud to work for the city is the fact that I know that at the end of the day, everybody here is working for the best interest of the community in the best way that they can. So I'd like to applaud you guys for that. As far as Parks and Recreation, the same things that I've been talking about before, but this is also coming up pretty soon. So Extravaganza is going to be taking place this Saturday. It is open to the public at large. Anybody can come. It's a completely free event. It will be at Garbutt Park for ages 1 to 4 at 1 o'clock on Saturday. It'll be at Gary Park at 1:30 for ages 1 through 11, and it'll be at Martin Road Park at 2 o'clock for ages 1 through 11. At the 2 o'clock session at Martin Road Park, there will also be the Easter Bunny, where you can take pictures of with the Easter Bunny. And at each park, there will be an egg with a ticket inside of it that if you find the egg with the ticket inside, you can come and redeem it for a free Easter basket. We want to thank the Ferndale Elks Club for their part in sponsoring the event and helping to operate the proceedings at Gary Park. And we hope to see everybody out there for the event. The second thing is summer camp. It is going to be opening up registration on Monday, April 3rd at 9 a.m. The information is all on the website already, so if you want to go ahead and get a jump start on it, you can pick the sessions and plan out the things that you want to take part in this summer. We have a wide variety of different themes and events and field trips and everything scheduled for this year, so we're looking forward to hosting everybody at the Detroit Curling Club. And if anybody has any questions about summer camp, about extravaganza, about anything Parks and Recreation related, you can contact us at the Ferndale Parks and Recreation Department at 248-544-6767. Thank you.
Thank you, Emmanuel. Next, Kara Sokol, representing the Communications Department. Oh, sorry, Riley, I didn't see Riley.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. I'm here to happily report that the next edition of our newsletter is out. This is our spring edition, so it covers content for April, May, and June for every city department. We have a lot of great stuff this edition. A couple of shout outs being yard waste season, our compost drop-off program, the No More May initiative, plant natural landscaping, a lot of great Parks and Rec content. We've updated the park amenities chart to reflect some new park updates that have been made. We have a public art feature. We highlight Juneteenth and Ferndale Pride. So we got a lot going on. I would highly suggest you give it a read. And I just quickly wanted to point out that this is our 8th edition. So that means the newsletter is 2 years old, which is pretty exciting. And I want to give a shout out to everybody who has read it and given some great feedback, and city staff for dealing with all my emails. I appreciate it. So if you want an extra copy, let me know. If you have any questions, I'm here. Thank you.
Thank you. I get comments how much people love these newsletters all the time.
Likewise, and I appreciate the boundaries you put in place for us, Riley. We wouldn't ever get anything done without them. DPW Director, Dan Antosik.
Good evening tonight, everyone. And since you all read your newsletter, you know that Curbside Yard Waste Collection begins next week, and that will be rolling through into December. So that's all I have tonight. Thank you.
I didn't hear the date. What was that, Dan? I'm sorry. April 3rd?
Yep, April 3rd.
Thank you.
And I will just close this out with a brief thank you to all of the staff and City Council that participated in the budget workshop that was held on March 18th. For those with 7 or 8 hours to spare and interest in local government, you can find us on YouTube and you can watch that budget workshop if you're interested. We will be presenting a slimmed down version of that budget workshop to City Council during the next council meeting in April. And per the charter, we will be shooting to adopt a budget by the second meeting in April. Mayor, it's all yours.
Wow, that's the shortest department updates in a while. All right, I'm going to start over with Councilman Mikulski.
Gosh, I don't have much except to say congratulations to the Ferndale High School boys basketball team. Yep. What a huge achievement. So congratulations. Great job winning the state championship.
Has there been a rain barrel announcement?
No, there has.
Okay.
Go ahead. I was going to do it, but you go ahead.
Sadly, I don't have Claire's info about whether or not you can still register. I'm going to guess that maybe you can. But at any rate, on Saturday, the city is sponsoring a subsidized rain barrel sale. We received some grant funding to help residents cover the cost of rain barrels for their home, to reduce the amount of rainwater that gets pushed into our combined storm sewer system, and also to save you some money. So you've got some water right there that doesn't have to come out of the tap when you're ready to water your plants. And if I can find it really quickly, I'll tell you the website to go to register for your subsidized rain barrel. And while I'm looking for it, I'll add that we have kind of a sliding scale system. We wanted to be able to give deeply discounted rain barrels to those who truly could not otherwise afford it. And on the flip side, also give the opportunity for those who can afford to give a little bit more so that we can kind of share the wealth. It's up to you. It's on sort of a good faith decision. You can pay $30, $60, or $90. So I urge folks, especially if you're on the east side in that clay area where the rain just doesn't want to soak down into the soil, if you live near an area that is constantly flooding, if you are not able to afford to buy a commercial rain barrel yourself, please avail yourself of this program by Googling Ferndale City Rain Barrel Program. There you go.
It's on our homepage. We made it nice and easy. There's a news story with a link directly because there's actually a purchase rate through MI Rain Barrel, which is the company, and there's a link in a news story right on our homepage. Thank you, Kara.
Thank you. Councilwoman Leaks May.
Oh, all right. So echo Councilmember Mikulski's sentiments. The Ferndale Boys basketball team, Division II champions, not won this since 1966. So this is huge. They're kind of the kings of the city right now. So please give their hats off to them, and they deserve it. And I also want to say congratulations to the Ferndale Winter Guard on their first place finish yesterday at Chippewa Valley. I want to share that there is a Friends and Family Night going on at Ferndale High School this Friday. I believe that, what's Friday's date? The 31st? The 31st. Yes. At 7 o'clock, performance at 7:30 at the Ferndale High School gym. And that is to kick off because they're going to the States the next day at Saginaw Valley State University. So wishing them well, and I want to thank everyone, all council members and staff and everyone involved in tonight's decisions and the thoughtful decision making. It was difficult, but that's part of being here at council at the dais. We make difficult decisions and we support one another, whether we agree or disagree. So I'm appreciative of this team and look forward to more work. Thank you.
Councilman Polka.
I really don't have anything tonight. I did want to thank staff for all the hard work that they did on the budget day. There were a lot of stuff that we had to go through. And Joe, you're limited to 20 slides. That's all I have, Mayor.
All right. Yeah, I'm going to throw my congratulations into the boys basketball team. I just think that's pretty awesome, representing the city since 1966. Won a state championship. That is just really outstanding. I just wanted to thank all the residents who signed up for the Fern and Learn. We had 30 residents who registered to participate in our first ever Fern and Learn. When does the first class start?
April 13th.
April 13th. Oh, wow. Well, I was going to be there, and I can't be there anymore. I have a work dinner I cannot get out of. Mayor Pro Tem, would you like to welcome the Fern and Learn folks on April 13th? This was just scheduled on Friday, and so I'm so sorry. Sorry, but what I wanted to say about the Fern and Learn, there's so many new names of people I don't know. And
One
so,
damn free night.
thank you. Well, we can ask other council members to step in as well. But I just really wanted to say what a wonderful turnout for the first rollout of this program. Lots of new names, and I look forward to engaging with them. Maybe I'll come to the second meeting and say hello. But since I can't come to the 13th anymore, sorry about that, you guys. With that, I am going to call it a night, you guys. It's 9:35. Everybody, please have a good rest of your evening, and hope for warmer weather and spring flowers.
What time is Fern and Learn?
I believe it starts at 6. Fern and Learn starts at 6.
5:30 to 7:30.
5:30 to 7:30. You don't have to stay for the whole thing.
Yeah. Yeah. You can do that.
Okay.